On Wednesdays afternoons, I am responsible for collecting up the children from school. The experience is similar to navigating the Disneyland lineups. Just as you think you're getting close to the school, they lead you around another building that's slowly moving forward. I soon made my way to the front of the line where William and Carol waited. They are now 13 and 14. I'm not allowed to display affection. Ew, gross, Dad? What if my buddies notice you doing this? Yes, they've reached an age where I'm the chauffeur for the ATM and food bank, which I pick up on Wednesdays because Barbara has a weekly project review. She oversees a development team at the interior design company where she works. They specialize on high-end office space and mansions as part of a national group. They make sure that each project is unique. Nothing is worse than seeing something you paid a lot of money for appear in someone else's corporate press release. Needless to say, I was astonished to find Barbara's sedan in the driveway. Perhaps she left something behind that she required. Why would she not have pulled into the garage after parking on my side? The children piled out and attacked the fridge. "Take it easy, fellas. Leave some room for dinner." I set down my briefcase and entered the living room to see Barbara snuggled up on the couch, a blanket draped over her. It was a warm day and the house was far from frigid. "Hi, babe. What's going on? I'm not feeling good. My stomach is flip-flopping and I'm having the runs." "Yeah, think it's COVID?" "No, I took one of those self-tests and it came up negative. It must be some form of flu. So why are you not in bed?" "I was there, but I got into an accident." "Will you be a darling and change the sheets?" There are 2 steps leading into the bedroom. I knew what kind of accident she had been in. I went out into the garage to get a clamp for my nose and latex gloves. At the very least, we include waterproof mattress coverings with each of our beds. An old habit. When the kids were small, they would climb into bed and occasionally have an accident. We are now prepared. However, they will only climb into our bed when they are sicker than a dog. I wasn't about to make dinner after that ordeal, so I ordered pizza and took a shower after emptying a can of room freshener. I really hope I don't acquire whatever Barbara is fighting. Barbara scheduled an appointment with our family doctor after looking and feeling for trash for a week. That was essentially a waste of time. Expectable answers. "It's probably the flu. Give it some more time. If it hasn't gone away by then, come see me in a week." Barbara returned to see the doctor 2 weeks later. She had lost a few pounds since she didn't want to eat for fear of blowing it out the other end. Her menu consists of energy drinks. The doctor did various blood tests, but nothing was far enough, outside of the ranges to justify any more action in the next weeks. Barbara learned to accept it. She was dressed in adult diapers and baggy trousers to conceal her shame. It was up to me to pick up the groceries. No, I wasn't utilizing a checklist. It was easier to pay the whole ticket and have Barbara place online orders while the kids and I wanted to do things throughout the weekend. Barbara never felt ready for it. We got things done without her. Our romantic life suffered considerably. There is no major surprise there. Who wants to do the dirty when the bigger dirty is waiting in the shadows? At the very least, I have an occasional hand job that will be terrible. Barbara finally saw a specialist after 2 months. She felt well the day before and on the day of her appointment. They did blood testing until our insurance deductible was met. Kiss that $5,000 goodbye. Her intestines were found to have increased amounts of mysterious enzymes. Made sense, but no explanation was given on why. Maybe Crohn's disease. However, the testing yielded negative results. She was granted the title of "so popular." Keep an eye on it. One night I joked, "Do you think I'm making you sick? How can you say such a thing? You've done an excellent job of picking up the slack since the beginning. I'm tired of fighting this. I wish they would find anything. Anything." Barbara's new life was as a recluse. She worked from home a lot and rarely went out. Her weight had fallen another £1.20, every so often. She'd feel better, but just for the weekend. The kids were so preoccupied with their sports schedules that they didn't realize how infrequently Barbara attended their games. Time went on. Barbara wasn't sick enough to leave work, but she was steadily losing her team. Management demoted her. Months became years. Barbara would feel bad about us not having sex, so she would only take one for the team once a week. It was a better option than nothing. William became hell on wheels after the age of 16. I no longer had to worry about transporting him and Carol to and from school. Now I had to worry about why they weren't home. At least Barbara was attempting to assist. She rarely felt 100%, but she had become accustomed to it after a while. Barbara appeared to be over her intestinal issues, but this lasted just around 6 months. It reappeared, and it was just as horrible as before. Barbara shed several tears. Her life plodded along. William graduated from high school and went to college. Carol graduated early and was also out the door. I confronted Barbara the day after Carol graduated from high school. "We should talk." "Okay, what is up?" I filed for divorce, alleging irreconcilable differences. A shocked expression transformed to full-fledged wrath. "Have you been unfaithful before? How could you betray me like this? The children are grown and it is time for me to go on. How can you walk out right now? I know the past 5 years have been difficult, but I have never stopped loving you. What did I do to deserve it?" "Mr. Dennis Wilson." Barbara's eyes grew large. "You knew she couldn't stop crying no matter how hard she tried." "That is a ridiculous question. I've been waiting until the kids leave for college. Keeping you at home was less expensive. Hope it was worthwhile. But Joan, it was many years ago. We're already past that. I apologize. I was mistaken and should not have done it. Cry a river. Whether it was right or wrong, you did it with no remorse. How did you even get back in touch with him once you felt better?" "Fuck off." Barbara's mood immediately improved when I left. She no longer had digestive difficulties. I was really making her sick. We sold the house and split the profits with the older kids. I believed I'd avoid counseling, but that wasn't the case. The outcome stayed unaltered. I'd rather take chances than stay with a known cheater. Epilogue. I was devastated when I found out Barbara was having an affair with Dennis Wilson. I discovered Barbara's hidden email account and set it up on my phone to keep track on her activities. You devote your life to your partner just to discover that you are not enough for her. Hell set on destroying the world took a back seat as my attorney explained how terrible my future would be. Barbara is penniless, but she is able to relocate her lover into the home. It was the same house we had bought together, but I had spent all of my leisure time repairing it. It is cheaper to keep her waiting for the kids to leave. Barbara could file for divorce at any time, according to the attorney, and that would be my fate. The disadvantage was enough to make me consider leaving the nation, so I did everything I could to remain her spouse. I stayed with my kids, living my life by counting down the days. While surfing the internet, I discovered an April Fool's joke. Mixing 2 over-the-counter liquid veterinarian medications might result in digestive trouble, so I purchased large bottles of each and stored them in my garage, as well as a bag of syringes from China. Using those syringes, I injected the concoction into Barbara's coffee K-cups. She enjoys the blueberry hazelnut blend. The children did not drink coffee, and I despised that combination. Barbara didn't complain in the first few days, so I increased the mixture significantly. That's why that first Wednesday was so difficult for her. Obviously, I went overboard. Granted, I used too much at first, but I soon discovered a nice medium. It was just enough to keep her feeling sick, but not enough to warrant a return to the doctor. It was amusing how her buddies would have the illness after sharing a cup of tainted coffee. It's friendly fire. Following Barbara's adultery emails, I discovered that she had frequently turned Dennis down. No, not because she didn't want him. She just didn't feel up to it. He finally gave up. After a few years, I thought Barbara's affair was over. That's when I reduced the dosage of the remedy, but not totally, because I was still in revenge mode. But then Barbara contacted him again. When I doubled the dosage, Barbara relapsed. A week later, she returned to see the specialist the day before and on the day of her appointments. I'd make certain that Barbara used unadulterated K-cups, even if she professed to be upset and unprepared for my divorce filing. Her sobbing left me unaffected. Only when I showed her the 5-year-old investigator's report did she realize how serious I was. Dennis, his wife, acquired a copy and referenced Barbara in her divorce suit. I made sure Barbara's friends and family received copies, which prompted my phone to stop ringing. I was no longer the insensitive, heartless bastard who abandoned a persistently ill Barbara in her time of need. If only they knew Dennis was reamed in his divorce. Now he eats ramen noodles and drinks water while his ex-wife spends his money on his replacement. That, in my opinion, is enough vengeance. As much as I'd like Barbara to know how I accomplished it, I'm concerned that I could have broken some legal lines. So I smirk a lot. Will I get married again? Possibly not. Maybe. Who knows? I can't go on a date without thinking of the awful anguish Barbara caused me. My final hope is that time will heal. This is the next story. This envelope contains the key to the Green Street vault where your clothing and personal things are housed. I've paid 1 month's rent for this storage facility. I apologize for not having enough time to properly pack everything, resulting in the utilization of 12 garbage bags. Regardless of the circumstances, I did my best to treat sensitive goods with care. I'd like to thank you for leaving me a letter on the mantel. It was surprising to see you and Danny engaged in intimate activities in our bed after you both went on a 2-week vacation using the tickets I had brought home. Danny's face was filled with happiness as he took pleasure in your pleadings not to stop. I'm not sure which of my performances was more impactful, the pained expression I had when I saw you, or when I threw flowers and tickets at you, begging you to go on a vacation with your sweetheart. Danny's eyes brightened as it became evident that you no longer desired me. When he heard about the cruise, he smiled triumphantly, assuming he had won. Alternatively, my most famous performance could have been the 3 weeks in which I had to pretend humiliation because this nasty creature disseminated rumors throughout the office about how he had stolen you away from me because of my claimed inadequacy. Even the office manager stopped by my desk to insult me. I sincerely beg that you express my gratitude to Danny for the email he left at work, notifying everyone about the 2-week cruise he was on at my cost with you as his companion. Furthermore, I'd like to thank you both for arranging a work trip for me that allowed us to spend 4 days together. I'm relieved you admitted to being seduced by him at your work Christmas party, even though he's flirted with you before. I hadn't noticed the two of you sneaking away until that particular instance. I saw you engage in sexual activities for the first time at the Christmas party and was able to grab a photograph with my phone. I am genuinely glad for you, especially given his wife's accusation that he lacks expertise of foreplay and lovemaking. Yes, his wife and I are romantically linked. I went to their house and gave her a snapshot of you around 2 weeks after an unknown Christmas celebration. Our initial purpose was to indulge in revengeful intimacy, but we discovered that our physical connection was so exceptional that we began indulging in frequent acts of love. As we continued to meet and chat, our affection for each other got greater. During this period, we devised a cruise itinerary and the ultimate act of retribution. We began recording all of your chats so that we could be aware of your joint plans. My legal representative enjoyed listening to these exchanges. When you and Danny were deciding where to send me next, Tina, Danny's wife, and I were anxious that you might not fall for the majority of our scheme. The most difficult part was persuading you to sell the house. Initially, I expected you would buy a larger home in a more desired location, which you did. Following Danny's departure, I entered the room unexpectedly with the documents you were supposed to sign. I knew you'd emit the aroma of intimacy and want me to leave the premises. You did not disappoint yet again. When I burst in, you looked terrified, until I explained that you needed to sign the paperwork for the legitimate excursion. You signed the documents without looking at them. I even heard you let out a sigh of relief as I hurriedly fled the room. You signed the power of attorney without inspecting it? Finally, I confronted you too. I was quite anxious when I entered the bedroom and spotted you in our bed. I must have given an excellent performance because both of you made disparaging remarks and sneered at my pain when I moved my clothing to the guest room after Danny left, giving him a place to store his possessions. I expected you to be overjoyed. However, you communicated your regrets in a sad, pouty tone. I must tell that I really liked the way you grinned. I wanted to keep as much distance as possible from you. Tina, Danny's wife, had separated herself from him. I am aware that he does not wear a wedding ring and makes false claims to be unmarried. But believe me, he has been married for 5 years. You are around the 8th or 9th affair that his wife has suspected since their wedding. I am writing to advise you and Danny that Tina and I have decided to end our relationship owing to your infidelity. We have decided not to seek divorces, but if you two choose to terminate your marriage for your personal well-being, you must cover the costs. Please provide the following information to Danny after he realizes Tina has sublet their apartment. He will definitely contact you. Unlike me, Tina has donated his clothing to the South Asian Army. We were able to find interested buyers who bought all of the furniture from our house and then from their apartment. After we sold our house and sublet Tina's apartment, Tina and I needed a new home. As a result, we decided to go to Europe to consider our options. Tina emptied the bank accounts while leaving the credit cards open for our trip because we were short on cash. Inform Danny that he will undoubtedly appreciate the large number of frequent flyer miles we accumulated for him while you were traveling. We spent a week in luxury at top-tier 5-star European hotels. All were charged to Denise's credit cards. You may regret choosing Danny because his credit limits were insufficient for the first 4 days of our trip. We used up 3 cards, but thankfully he had 4 more to last the rest of our trip. Now that I've shared the positive aspects of Tina's actions, as well as our trip to the apartment and the bank, it's time to share the bad news with Danny. I am confident that he will be fired once he returns to work. I sued him, the branch manager, and the company for affectional alienation. When my lawyer went to the company's headquarters in New York, he didn't waste time presenting the proof. He played a recording of your chat with Danny, in which Danny brags about sending me away so he can have a sexual relationship with you. He also aired a recording of other employees approaching my desk to shame me for Danny's role in taking my wife away. Even the branch manager took part in this humiliating behavior. Furthermore, the lawyer submitted an email from Danny about the cruise, which was saved on the company's server. After witnessing and hearing all of the facts, the company's lawyers agreed to our fair request for cash compensation and layoffs on the condition that I sign a private agreement. They faxed the agreement to me at work, which I instantly signed and submitted with my resignation letter. My lawyer was issued 2 checks, one for his fee and one for me, which contained my cash, pension payment, and unused vacation days. I had retired before you and that other boarded the ship. Tina also sold one of their vehicles and her sailboat. Please notify Danny that he should be cautious about what he signs before rushing out. He granted Tina power of attorney, as you did. She had intended to sell the automobile. You returned home with, but decided against it because the remaining payments were not worth much. Now, what about you, my lovely wife, who took great joy in cheating on me and calling me weak while you and Danny laughed? Tina and I have planned a strategy to repay you both for the humiliation you have imposed on me, twofold. I hope your mother will allow you and Danny to stay at her home. When I handed her the letter, I stated that you were on a cruise with your lover, and that I was leaving because I couldn't stand the humiliation of the 2 of you publicly indulging in sexual activity in our home. I forwarded her a copy of your nasty letter. She appeared to be bothered by your promiscuous behavior. That was what she told me. I just referred to you as a good wife who decided to become another man's mistress. Your mother thought this was an accurate description of your conduct. In any event, you signed the power of attorney before. If you forgot, please go to the opening of the letter. As a result, I sold the furnishings the moment you boarded the ship. When Danny sent me to Florida for 4 days, I moved my clothing and stuff into Tina's hotel room. I took a few sick days, flew out of the country, and opened a bank account in the Cayman Islands. I transferred the monies to my new account after closing the house sale. As previously said, my wife was not present during the sales closing because she was looking for a new place to live, and I was leaving soon. As a result, they were eager to help. I also sold both of our cars because I had no use for them. I canceled all but one of my credit card accounts in my name. I hope you avoided using the cards while on your trip, as that could have been uncomfortable. I took the initiative to liquidate all of our bank accounts, and having the power of attorney came in handy once again. The home buyers were more than delighted to transfer the monies to my new account. By the way, I used your half of the money to settle our joint credit card debts before shutting them. I've always been cautious with our money. I used to believe you were one of the most beautiful women I'd ever seen, until I saw Tina. Now I see that Danny is a terrible fool for betraying a goddess like Tina. She has shoulder-length brown hair and stunning green eyes. She is tiny and thin, with absolutely perky breasts that will not sag like yours in a few years, and a gorgeous, firm derriere. She is 4 years younger than me, therefore I will have a young mistress while Danny ends up with your much older self. Throughout our vacation in Europe, men would look at us with jealousy as she held my hand while we walked. All eyes were on us as we danced the night away. Every night, the stars witnessed our intense lovemaking. Tina and I have yet to determine where to live with our combined wealth. We no longer need to work, so we will most likely embark on a journey to choose the ideal area to retire. I recall you saying that you enjoyed your part-time job because you found sitting at home boring. Now you may fully reap the benefits of working full-time. Maybe you and Danny can start looking for work together. I wish you the best. Here's the next story. One evening, I sat at our table going through my daughter Katie's medical records. Katie was about to enter kindergarten, so the pediatrician gave her a comprehensive checkup. Meanwhile, my wife laid her school forms out on the table, looked at them casually. In the blood type column, I recognized a letter indicating the end of my marriage. It read A. I stopped moving for about 10 seconds, totally clueless. I then went to the cabinet to retrieve 2 sheets of paper from our medical records. Everything was exactly as I remembered it. Last summer, my wife and I donated blood to the Red Cross and received receipts indicating our blood types. They were on 2 separate sheets of paper. My initials were B, hers was O. Katie could not be my daughter if my wife was her mother, and I saw Marie give birth. The father's blood type had to be A. The kids had already fallen asleep, and Marie was upstairs watching television. I grabbed a beer from the refrigerator and sat in the backyard, reflecting on the state of my marriage. I'd say it was okay, pretty average, with a few ups and downs. Marie and I were deeply in love while we were dating and in the early stages of our marriage. We were always sexually active, sometimes passionately, even outside the bedroom. We were constantly touching, holding hands, walking side by side, and caressing each other as we went by. Naturally, that faded with time. Isn't that how most marriages work? But now that I had undeniable proof of her infidelity, everything I thought I knew about our marriage was shaken. I ruminated. What's changed? Was it gradual or abrupt? It felt like it was both. Initially, our closeness dwindled slowly. However, about 6 years ago, a few months before Katie's conception, events took an unusual turn. Marie, who is usually warm and loving, began to behave strangely. One evening, she arrived home late from work, gave me a quick, tender kiss, then dashed to the shower and avoided me for the rest of the night. The following morning was just as chilly and distant, but that night, she was a completely different person. She arrived home early, cooked a special dinner, tucked me into bed early, and made love to me with fervor and passion that I thought we'd lost. We cuddled happily before bedtime, and Marie expressed her love for me. Several times that week, we had passionate discussions. The coldness returned abruptly. She arrived late from work, didn't say anything to me, and quickly disappeared into the shower for the next 2 months. I barely recognized the woman I married. Marie was both affectionate and detached, attentive and preoccupied, patient and irritable. I repeatedly asked her if something was wrong, if there were any issues between us or at work. Her only response was to express her uncertainty to Bill, admitting that she may be feeling nervous and apologizing for it. When things finally settled after 3 months, it was far from the happy beginning of our marriage. Marie became less moody, but she was rarely affectionate, and her desire for closeness diminished. We made love no more than once a week, sometimes less, and only when I insisted strongly. Any gentle suggestion that we could be carnal tonight was met with sharp rejection. I had to confront the long period since our last carnal encounter. Marie would reluctantly engage in lovemaking afterward, revealing that she was only doing so to satisfy me. Is this depressing pattern prevalent in all marriages? I couldn't say because it was the only marriage I was familiar with at the time. Naturally, I thought about what was going on, considering the possibility of infidelity. However, shortly after Marie became pregnant, our shared excitement about our future child and the joy of having our wonderful Katie overshadowed the majority of my concerns about our relationship. We were exhausted after Katie's birth, which explains Marie's disinterest in lovemaking. Even so, I find it unsatisfactory. When Katie turned 3, Marie got pregnant again and we welcomed Brian. Katie had just turned 4 years old. So Bill and Marie, once passionate lovers and spouses, became Bill and Marie, parents to 2 delightful but exhausting children. We both adored our children deeply. Despite my current realization of my profound dissatisfaction with our marriage and nearly non-existent love-making life, I was unaware of it at the time. If that was the case, I concluded that all couples with young children went through this phase, including the startling realization that my daughter was not biologically mine. The events of 6 years ago were no longer mysterious. Marie must have begun an affair around that time. This explains her distant demeanor and sudden rush to the shower. The subsequent passionate lovemaking and warmth may have been caused by guilt. Or, if I'm being generous, her attempt to keep the appearance of a happy marriage while continuing the affair. I sat in the yard, watching the night fall and the stars twinkle. My initial shock turned into a growing anger. Not only had my beloved wife betrayed me, but she had also duped me into raising another person's child, and possibly more than one. If I had been solely concerned with punishing Marie at the time, I would have stormed into the house, presented her with evidence of blood types, coerced her into confession, and thrown her out onto the street. However, it wasn't that simple. I loved my children regardless of their biological background. If we divorced, Marie would most likely receive sole custody once the truth about their parentage was revealed. I reflected and asked myself, what do I truly desire? The answers became unexpectedly clear. First, I needed to find out the truth about Marie's actions. Was it a brief affair? Was she unaware Katie was not my biological child? Or did she know everything and have a secret relationship for years? Second, I was determined to raise my children as my own, keeping them unaware of my non-biological relationship with them. Once I'd defined my goals, devising a strategy to achieve them seemed surprisingly simple. I returned home and quietly collected cotton swabs from each of the children's cheeks while they were sleeping. Katie's will be labeled as a 2, and Brian's as a 3. Then I went into the kitchen, swabbed my own cheek, and marked it with a 1. I had a friend who worked in a chemistry lab, and I asked him to conduct DNA tests for me. This marked the first step in gathering critical information following my initial response. I knew exactly what to do next. A week later, my friend called me without knowing where the samples had come from. I told them about meeting people with the same surname, which sparked conversations about potential distant kinship. He then stated that Bill's 2 and 3 were siblings. However, the first one was not related. This revelation revealed that they were not cousins, as previously thought. I thanked him for the information and hung up the phone. Katie and Brian were siblings who shared the same parents. Marie, on the other hand, had 2 children with an unknown person. Was she aware of this? She must have been aware of her relationship with this individual. But was she aware of his paternity with our children? There was a simple way to find out the truth by approaching Marie while she washed dishes in the kitchen. I broached the subject without turning to her. I began by asking her a question, and she encouraged me to continue. I described the situation in which my colleague's biologist friend needed DNA samples from relatives. I suggested that we collect swabs from her, me, and each child with the intention of dealing with the kids before bedtime and hours later. As I spoke in the middle of my explanation, I carefully observed Marie's reaction. She tensed, almost dropping a pan before calming down. After I finished, there was a minute of silence before she turned to face me. Marie expressed her reservations about the idea, asking how we could be certain about what the biologist would do with the samples or whether our privacy would be protected. Despite my arguments, she vehemently opposed the idea, insisting that she was uninterested. She asked me to notify my colleague that we were declining to participate. I responded softly, saying that it was fine either way. Her reaction told me what I needed to know. My next step was to uncover the truth about her affairs: who, where, when, and perhaps why. Despite the uncertainty, searching her home may yield clues. I needed time for a thorough search. We planned to pay her parents a visit minutes before we left on Saturday. I pretended to have a word crisis and made a phone call before explaining the situation to Marie. She reluctantly agreed to leave with the kids. Now I had hours to go through the house meticulously. I decided to search Marie's spaces instead of my usual haunts, skipping the kitchen, bookshelves, and living room. I ignored my own areas while thoroughly combing through her closet and dresser. The discovery of hidden lingerie suggested secrets. Only the children's rooms and the attic remained for exploration. After concluding that the children's rooms were less promising, I entered the attic. Inside, I discovered various old furniture, a few lamps, and numerous boxes containing items from before our marriage. Recognizing the complexity of the undertaking, I examined the region. Notably, one of the 3 adjoining boxes was less dusty and had just been disturbed. Upon careful study, I focused on these 3 boxes and discovered Marie's old stuff, chiefly college letters. There were letters and trinkets from me, including nice greeting cards buried at the bottom of one box. Under old papers was a tiny stack of current notes and 2 unmarked videotapes. After extracting them, I learned that the recordings included sexual content, but the notes were from Harry. Her office superior expressed blatantly intimate feelings. After examining the evidence for 20 minutes, it became clear that Marie had deceived me with Harry around 3 months before our daughter Katie was born. The notes, which coincided with Marie's unusual behavior at home, indicated a dynamic marked by Harry's domination and Marie's unfeeling acquiescence. They dictated her dress on various occasions and described their sexual experiences after work. Some even mocked me for unintentionally raising their children. It was clear that Harry had no intention of confirming their fatherhood. My rage grew when I discovered the scope of Marie's deception. Knowing Harry was happily married to Caroline and uninformed of his affair, Marie appeared to gladly participate, with no signs of coercion. She seems to enjoy her submissive role. They both looked to know the paternity of Marie's children and seemed to relish keeping it a secret from me. These disclosures proved Marie's deception during the last 6 years, when she purposely conceived children with another guy while posing as my devoted wife. I was filled with wrath and decided to exact revenge on both Marie and Harry, after a brief minute of reflection. I loaded the recordings into the VCR and saw images of Harry and Marie indulging in sexual practices. The previous tape, possibly at Harry's place, and the most current one in our bedroom, prompted concerns about Marie's prospects. Throughout my business trips. Overall, the tapes demonstrated Harry's intimacy, authority over Marie, and eager cooperation. The room's lighting was not very brilliant, but both figures were plainly visible, and the sound quality was shockingly good, allowing me to hear every word and moan on the first tape. From the start of their relationship, I could hear Harry assuming control while sitting on the bed. He told Marie to do a provocative striptease, which she did with a smile. The proximity was hard, with no warmth or affection, and Harry talked brutally to her. It saddened me that Marie seemed to enjoy the interaction. The second tape contained similar carnal scenes, but also some new intriguing dialogue while they rested on the bed. Marie questioned Harry about his apathy with me raising his children. He stated that I was a great guy who liked children, and he wasn't concerned about anything else. He said that if it wasn't for that, he would tell her to leave me. Marie responded by asking what I was good for. Aside from changing diapers, she complained to Harry that it was unfair. Marie defended me, emphasizing my generosity and affection while drawing comparisons to Harry's approach. She hinted at her attraction to Harry's roughness because it contrasted with my tenderness. Despite this, they went on with their encounter before Harry left. After finishing both viewings, I reflected on their hubris, not only in generating such proof, but also in recklessly leaving it alongside Harry's notes where I could discover them. My retribution would be extensive, aimed at both of them. I used a scanner to digitize each note on my hard drive, and then, using software borrowed from work for a prior project, I converted each videotape into a digital file on my hard drive for later editing. After finishing, I hid the albums and tapes in the trunk of my car, behind the spare tire. I then meticulously cleaned the attic, leaving Marie unaware of my presence. Over the next 2 weeks, I painstakingly carried out my plans. It was far simpler than I expected to appear normal, with Marie acting as if nothing weird had happened. It occurred to me that she had deceived me for 6 years, making it easier for me to respond. Despite my lack of desire for her, I continued to be affectionate, even initiating proximity, albeit cautiously, to make it easier for her to decline. I had no desire to ever touch her again. Marie's life was about to be altered by a significant incident. She had been elected as the new president of the Key Society, a major charity in our city, and was scheduled to take office at a luncheon where she would deliver a speech describing the organization's goals for the following year. Marie had been a member of the Key Society board for 3 years and was deeply thrilled to be named president. She was nervous about her presentation and asked for my help in preparing the PowerPoint segment she planned to utilize. This provided me with an excellent opportunity for approximately a week. I worked with her every evening, allowing her to share her slides and other materials with me and organize them into a cohesive presentation. She practiced this numerous times over the month coming up to her big day, and it always went well. Concurrently, I prepared my own completely different PowerPoint presentation, ready to replace hers. The night before the luncheon, I removed Marie's file and replaced it with mine, including a lock to prevent her from disabling it. Once the presentation began, all I had to do was confirm that Marie had extended an invitation to Harry and his wife for dinner. I casually inquired, and she affirmed that they would attend on that important occasion. I shared Marie's excitement, but for different reasons. Marie arrived early, dressed neatly in a black evening gown, and looked stunning. I assisted her in configuring the laptop and doing a few tests to guarantee seamless playback. We all enjoyed a nice dinner and some opening speeches. Marie was then warmly greeted by the outgoing president, and she approached the podium with a mix of shyness and confidence. As cheering broke out, she began her speech and launched the PowerPoint display. Initially, it unfolded as predicted, with representations of the Society's major charity initiatives and financial breakdowns. Then, following my plan, it quickly altered focus. A series of still photographs followed frames from 2 videos displaying a couple performing various sexual actions. While some photographs were faint, the cumulative impression of a dozen or so clearly showed Marie and Harry for a few minutes. Marie continues to address major societal issues. Then, amid a tremendous uproar in the audience, she glanced to the screen behind her, gasping. She accidentally knocked a glass of water onto the podium, freezing in disbelief. As she desperately sought to interrupt the presentation, a bright blush spread across her face and neck. By then, still images had evolved into short video clips. Harry's voice rang out as he asked how they would keep me from finding she was expecting his child. He stated that as long as she gave me some proximity, I would not suspect anything. He also stated that she should remember that she belonged to him. The gathering erupted in laughter and jeers from every angle. Marie stared captivated, completely startled, and too stunned to be embarrassed. Caroline, Harry's wife, grabbed a bouquet of flowers from a neighboring table, crushed it over Harry's head, and fled amidst the chaos as others left the ballroom. They returned their gaze to Marie, gesticulating and recreating the breathtaking spectacle. Marie and I were suddenly left alone. She stood on the podium, defeated and desolate, then sat at a table 10 feet away. I smiled broadly as I glanced up at her. She eventually caught my gaze, bearing a look of intense grief. She questioned how I could betray her and remarked that she thought I loved her, which I found humorous considering the situation. I busted out laughing and left, rejecting any leftover feelings for her. It was not like that at all. It was a beautiful fantasy, but completely unrealistic. I realized that the entire community would soon learn about Harry's paternity, potentially jeopardizing my custody of the children in the divorce. They would also dislike being classified as Marie's illegitimate offspring. I acknowledged that I should have been more discreet in taking the initiative. I consulted a divorce attorney and worked with them several times to develop documents for later use. I subsequently constructed the same PowerPoint presentation I outlined previously, but instead of waiting for Marie's dinner event, I showed it to her. After putting the children to bed one evening 4 weeks before the dinner, I summoned Marie and asked her to study the draft of the PowerPoint presentation I had created for her planned speech the following month. She snapped, asking if it could wait because she was fatigued. That day, I firmly stated that it couldn't wait, reminding her that I needed to review what adjustments were required so that I could make them on time. I explained that I performed all of this for her during my spare time. I then led her into the office and set her in front of the computer, directing her to type the letter A when she was prepared. I informed her that the file will start on its own, smiling within. I paid great attention to her. Initially, everything went smoothly as she practiced her remarks on the first few slides of the Society's presentation. She let out a gasp. Her face strained with color as she watched still photographs of herself and Harry in close proximity. She turned to me, mouth gaping, and remained quiet. I returned her look impassively. Soon, video clips emerged, revealing conversations about his paternity for her children and her deception of me. As the events progressed, Marie desperately tried to stop the file, but I resisted her attempts. Eventually, the screen went black. This ordeal lasted approximately 2 minutes. Marie fell in her chair, head bowed and unwilling to meet my sight. After a minute, she spoke out, lifting her head to look at me. In that instant, she appeared to be 20 years younger than me. "I owe Bill." "I am so sorry," she wailed. "I am sincerely sorry. Will you ever forgive me?" "Do you forgive me?" I replied harshly. "For what?" "Let us see. For having an affair with Harry Dorner that supposedly lasted throughout our 6-year marriage, for bearing him 2 children while making me believe they were mine, for insulting and disrespecting me behind my back, and for denying me intimacy at Harry's request. Is this what you want?" Forgiveness for her sobs became more intense. "Bill, I do not love him. You're the one I love, the one I've always adored." My rage simmered, repressed. I said nothing. But inside I thought, "No, Marie, that's nonsense. You enjoy our lifestyle. You appreciate how I meet your requirements. Take care of the children. But you do not love me. No lady who loves her husband would be so deceptive." I reclined and allowed her tears to flow. I loved her anguish, remaining silent for the 20 minutes it took her to cry. She eventually sniffled many times before wiping her face and looking at me. "What will you do, Bill? Are you planning to divorce me?" "No, Marie, I will not. I lied. I care too much about Katie and Brian, even if they are not biologically mine." I paused before proceeding. "However, things will alter dramatically from now on. You can count on it. Let us begin immediately. Call that moron Harry and tell him to come here in 15 minutes. She glanced at me with dread on her face. "But I can't do it. He's at home with his wife and children. He will not come." I grinned. "Say whatever you want, just get him here. Tell him that if he doesn't show up within 15 minutes, his marriage will end tomorrow." She paused, possibly disturbed by the harshness in my demeanor, before saying anything else. She went to the kitchen and called her sweetheart. When Harry came, he had the false smile I expected. Marie must have updated him on the issue, as he appeared uncomfortable and concerned. "Come into the office and take a seat, Harry. And you, Marie, we have something to talk about." As we settled in, I gave directions. I didn't waste any time. "Okay, Harry, here's the deal. You've been having a good time with Marie for a while, making me look foolish. That's it for now. Everything's changed, and it's time to face the consequences." He started to respond, but I silenced him. "Sit, pay attention, and listen." I scanned through the PowerPoint presentation, enjoying his terrified reaction to its contents. After the presentation, there was a long, unexpected stillness. Surprisingly, I enjoyed it more than they did. "Now you will do exactly what I say without question, or your seemingly happy marriage to Caroline will come to an abrupt and public end. Understand? Do not speak. Just nod." I gave instructions. He agreed reluctantly, his expression filled with rage. "Good. Listen carefully and maintain silence. I have a few paperwork for you to sign. I will give them to you one by one. You may wish to have your lawyer review them, so I'll give you 48 hours to return them. Signed. Otherwise, Caroline will be asked to watch a brief video clip. The first contract admits that you are Katie and Brian's biological father and agrees to pay child support until they age 21, as well as a lump amount for their college education. The amounts indicated below are $10,000 per child every year, plus $100,000 per child for their first year of college. The funds will be deposited in a trust fund, of which I am the sole trustee with the ability to use them for the children's benefit," I stated. Harry erupted from his chair, furious. "Listen, Bill, this is completely ludicrous. I have no intentions." I forced him back into his seat. "Harry, shut the hell up. You are wealthy and we both know it. This is not your show anymore, it is my, and you have no option. Now remain silent until I grant you permission to talk," I commanded across the room. Marie was looking at me with a terrified expression. This was a side of her loving spouse that she had never seen before. "The second document allows me to adopt the children. You and Marie will have to sign it. The final paper is your permanent declaration of parental rights to Katie and Brian, with a promise never to reveal your paternity to anybody. Finally, a frank acknowledgement that you manipulated my wife at work, coercing her into an affair." What did I continue with? Harry exploded once more. That is a pure fabrication, and she wanted it just as much as I did. Sit down, Harry, I ordered severely. Perhaps, but Marie will continue to file exploitation complaints against you. It's one of my reasons for not divorcing her. Do you understand, Marie? I inquired, turning to her. She cast a terrified gaze between me and Harry, but made no answer. Let me clarify, I said to each of them. I have no imminent plans to act upon these documents. Consider them as insurance, Harry, in case you ever consider avoiding your financial duties to our children or suddenly decide to divulge their genuine parentage to others, I said, handing Marie the drafted exploitation complaint. Sign it, Marie, I said firmly. She complied quietly, still appearing nervous. Now, Harry, we're almost done with your part in today's proceedings. I expect to have these documents back in my hands within 48 hours. You can deliver them here. Should you entertain any erroneous thoughts, such as harming me, rest assured that copies of your incriminating correspondence with Marie are safely maintained and ready to surface if necessary. I ended, staring at him disdainfully. Any questions? Taking Marie's hand, I led her back to the office and seated her. I had never seen her in such a state before. She shivered with terror. It's okay, Marie. I would never harm you. There's no reason to be terrified, I reassured her. God, Bill, what has gotten into you? How could you do this to Harry? She exclaimed. I looked at her with considerable surprise. You honestly do not understand, Marie. Don't you know that what he did to you and us was nasty and unjust? She reddened. Yes, of course, it's plain. Well, you're mad. It feels like you've lost your mind. She proceeded. I sat silent for a minute, unsure what to say. Marie, I have guaranteed you that I will not divorce you. However, our marriage will surely change dramatically. Do you understand? I inquired. Yes, Bill. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make amends. But what did I do to you? She pleaded. All right, I conceded. Let's set a few conditions. Within 2 weeks, you will have a new job. I will not allow you to continue seeing Harry every day at work. It should be obvious. But you are not to have any further personal interactions with Harry. There was no hugging, kissing, love, phone calls, emails, or anything else I had planned. Furthermore, if our marriage lasts, it will be on a very different foundation. I will not tolerate your nasty temper, coldness, and apathy. I expect you to be a pleasant, kind, and caring wife every day, demonstrating your love and respect for marrying me by foregoing the wild, unfettered desire you enjoyed just with Harry. I expect to see you in the beautiful lingerie you've kept concealed in your drawer. I expect you to be enthusiastic and willing to get close. If you truly love me, Marie, you have a lot of lost time to make up for, I asserted. She crossed the room and knelt before me, hugging my legs tightly. I love you more than words can say, Bill, and I will prove it to you, she said tearfully. I noticed her pale, tear-streaked face and scared eyes. Somewhere within me persisted traces of my former love and loyalty to this woman with whom I shared so much. However, they were eclipsed by my resentment of her selfishness and hypocrisy. She deserves to face whatever penalties come her way. I said this with a softened tone. Listen, Marie, your big social dinner is coming up in 4 weeks. Let us take advantage of this opportunity to restart our marriage and maybe improve it. If all goes well, the dinner will be a chance to celebrate the success of our new initiatives. Agreed. She nodded and tightened her hug. Yes, Bill. Thank you for giving me this chance. I will be whatever you want me to be. Drawing her closer, she kissed me and promised to make amends. Give me 10 minutes to freshen up and then I'll start making things right, she promised, rising with a smile as she left the room. I reclined in my chair, delighted by Marie's attempts to satisfy me. The following 4 weeks promised to be extremely entertaining. I was astonished she didn't notice what I chose not to do. I refrained from disclosing the specifics of the incident or its beginnings. The entire event must have been a huge shock for her with no time for thought. But honestly, I didn't ask because I didn't care. My connection with Marie had ended, but she was oblivious. I entered the bedroom a few minutes later and saw the bed beautifully made. The lights dimmed, and Marie lay on her side in a revealing crimson nightgown. After finishing her grooming ritual, she looked lovely, as attractive as ever, but clearly worried. I spotted a bottle of lubricant on the nightstand in a sexy yet nervous voice. She asked where I was and encouraged me to come closer, extending her arms. I hurriedly undressed and embraced her. Our kisses kindled passion. Her body radiated warmth and she wriggled in anticipation. Whether playful or not, I enjoyed the moment. Setting aside my displeasure at Marie, I indulged in pleasure with her. Her allure and impatience were intoxicating, especially after years of passively accepting her leadership. I reclined as she took charge. She then turned out the light and lay near me under the blanket. She kissed my neck tenderly and said goodbye as I fell asleep peacefully. I expected to receive similar attention for the next 4 weeks. I truly loved the next weeks as Marie worked to repair our marriage. The next morning, she greeted me with a bright grin and a sweet kiss, offering delight. Before breakfast, I watched her go above and beyond her typical routine to get the kids ready for the day. That evening, she cooked an unusual supper from a cookbook, but the children preferred their customary cuisine. Marie made sure kids bathed and went to bed on time so we could spend our evening together. Our nocturnal intimacy was a welcome break from previously. Marie wore another nightgown and we had some unhurried lovemaking. Regardless of my secret feelings, her enthusiasm, affection, and vitality remained continuous. I couldn't ignore the enjoyment we exuded on a regular basis. Marie's kind attention was constant both in the mornings and behind closed doors. My life appeared to be a joyful fantasy, despite a lack of confidence in my wife and a smoldering wrath behind my outward contentment. Harry's completed paperwork arrived fast, and I soon secured Marie's agreement for adoption, completing the process within 10 days with a private hearing arranged by my lawyer. My attorney then handled the divorce proceedings. Dennis Reynolds, a colleague with whom I occasionally cooperate, paid me a surprise visit one morning at work. At 28, she was 5 years my junior and stunning. While I was aware she was divorced and her flirtatious remarks did not go unnoticed, I never considered her more than one of the ladies I dreamt about. In your dreams, I expected Denise's visit to be work-related, but it turned out to be otherwise. "Bill," she mentioned, "what's changed about you lately? I'm not sure if you look younger, fitter, or whatever." "Thank you for the compliment, Denise." I responded with a smile, then thought, why not? I blurted out something altogether different, which is not appropriate for discussion here. "Perhaps we can have lunch together today." "That sounds wonderful." She agreed. We went to the salad bar, then took our sandwiches to a park table to enjoy the sun. I mentioned that the shift you noticed in me was most likely caused by my failed marriage. She appeared puzzled. "And that improves your appearance. Please explain." I gave her a simplified version of the story a few weeks ago. I learned that my wife was having an affair with a coworker. It has been going on for a while. I told him to leave her alone, and she has been doing everything she can to make amends. "Here's a secret, Denise. Marie thinks she can win me back, but I've already chosen to leave her in a few weeks. I cannot stay with someone who has betrayed me. In the meantime, she treats me like a king, both inside and outside the bedroom. This is the change you observed today." I ended, and she gave me a look. "I'm impressed by how well you're handling it," she remarked. "When I found out my ex was cheating, I almost broke down. It took me several months to get back on track. I apologize. I offered. I didn't realize you went through that. But I've gained control of my circumstances now. It will unfold just how I wish, not someone else's way. That's making me feel much better." I added, "I'm taking another chance." One positive aspect of my circumstance is that, while I am not yet formally single, I am confident that I will be soon, so I don't have to hide my adoration for the attractive lady sitting beside me in the park today, I added, beaming at her. She blushed slightly, looked away, and then back at me. "Bill, you've put me in a difficult situation. I didn't think it was that simple," she said. "Sorry, Denise, but you're so lovely and entertaining. I've been attracted to you since we first met. It's just that discussing it was previously taboo. Is there any chance you'll join me for dinner on Saturday? I know a great Italian restaurant with a river view." She gazed at me intently. "Bill, I like you too, and it has always been simple with you. Can I trust you? Is your marriage actually over? Or is this just an attempt to get into my pants? Excuse my skepticism, Denise, but I've seen this scenario before. I've always been honest with you. And as you know, I have never pushed you before. I'll stop my relationship with Marie in around 2 weeks and file for divorce on the same day. There's no going back. However, I understand if you wish to remove yourself. I'll only be somewhat disappointed." She smiled. "No, Bill. Now that you've made the offer, I'm prepared to accept it before you reconsider." She looked at me carefully, and after a brief pause, I leaned in and we exchanged a short, sweet kiss. It wasn't fierce or passionate, but it seemed like a lovely promise as we left ways. When I told my wife about my Saturday night date, I couldn't stop smiling like a happy child. It brought out the vicious side in me. I plainly explained that I would be going out with another woman and expected her to stay at home with the children. Marie was shocked and on the edge of tears. "Bill," she objected, "but I've tried so hard. Please think of something to save our marriage. How do you see someone else?" "It is fairly straightforward. Not only did you see someone else, but you also had a 6-year affair behind my back, despite your recent efforts. And I'm feeling better. It does not imply that you automatically deserve my undying loyalty. It's evident that I'll have to find other ways to amuse myself before we can be on equal footing." Her tears started to flow. "Will you sleep with her?" "No, but I can. That's what you need to understand, if thinking about it makes you feel bad. So that's how you made me feel." With that, I left the room, bringing the conversation to an end. My first outings with Denise were enjoyable, but cautious. We proceeded slowly. Perhaps we both sensed there was more to our relationship than just physical attraction. We talked, laughed, commiserated about colleagues, shared childhood experiences, and generally got to know each other. It was effortless and natural at moments, reminding me of my early days with Marie. The thought made me sad, but I put it aside. After our third meal, when I unlocked Denise's car door outside her apartment, she gently asked if I wanted to come in. We both understood the implication, and I felt a sudden surge of longing. Once inside, she sank into my grasp, and we kissed and hugged like smitten teens. Pulling back somewhat, she admitted to me that she truly wanted this, but was apprehensive because it had been a while. She urged me to be careful and patient, and I promised her with a grin before gently lifting her and asking her the way to her bedroom. Later, I realized that while Denise's lovemaking was great, it was markedly different from my prior meetings with Marie. She was shy at first, allowing me to explore and caress her body. Yet she was so beautiful that every time with her was sheer delight. Our first carnal session was sensitive, affectionate, and far more loving than my previous wild encounters with Marie. It felt like two people caring for each other and making each other happy. Denise kissed me several times and asked if I could spend the night. I happily consented, and we dozed out in each other's arms. The next morning, she appeared a little shy again, and while we didn't make love, we said our goodbyes with genuine compassion, sharing several gentle kisses. With only a few days till my intended wedding night with Marie, I kept my intentions disguised from Denise, but I did say that my divorce will be finalized soon. When I got home at 9:30 a.m. on Saturday, I found Marie quietly weeping at the kitchen table, clearly aware of how I'd spent the night before, pretending sympathy more than I truly felt. I embraced her warmly. "I apologize, Marie. I understand how you're feeling," I muttered. "Bill, this is just terrible. The notion of you with another woman rips me apart. I've been incredibly selfish throughout these years. How could I have been so insensitive to your emotions?" She looked at me gratefully and whispered, "Thank you. Thank you for offering me another chance." Marie's big night, like me, was swiftly coming. To some extent, I mourned that the last 4 weeks with Marie, distinguished by highly fulfilling proximity, were enjoyable and will be missed. However, nothing she did helped to alleviate my bitterness and wrath. Her total betrayal outweighed all attempts at reconciliation. When I looked into my heart, I found only a tiny bit of affection for her and a minuscule drop of sympathy for what lay ahead of her. While working on a PowerPoint presentation for her speech, I secretly created my own version, which was not exactly the same as hers, in order to disguise Harry's identity as the children's father. Nonetheless, the overall approach resembled hers, a series of photographs followed by intriguing videos. I set up the laptop so Marie's presentation would play anytime she used it. However, by entering a certain key combination, including a passphrase, I could lock her presentation and replace it with my own. Marie anxiously inquired in the days preceding up to the event, as well as on the evening itself, whether I had removed the horrible files she discovered 4 weeks prior. With a caring grin, I reassured her that it was gone and showed her that her presentation was still intact on the laptop. The last few days at home were really wonderful. Marie became more certain that she was winning me over again, and her amorous gestures appeared less desperate but more tranquil. The agony she felt while I spent the entire night with Denise only elevated her in our bed, knowing that the charade was soon to end. When the big night arrived, I enjoyed every moment. We arrived early, with me wearing a rented tuxedo and Marie looking stunning in a black evening gown with spaghetti straps that highlighted her neck and shoulders. We played her PowerPoint presentation again to make sure everything was in order before she leaned over to deposit her purse behind the podium. I quickly entered the key combination, signaling that everything was set and everything went just as planned. We had a great dinner and engaged in friendly conversation with our table mates. The outgoing president then cordially introduced Marie, who cautiously approached the stage to applause. According to my watch, her excitement and anticipation lasted exactly 54 seconds. That is how long it took for the still images of her infidelity to show on the screen. Marie did not freeze or drop any water, but she looked at me with dread and amazement, before unsuccessfully attempting to halt the presentation. Naturally, she failed as the video clips aired, and the audience responded with a combination of outrage and hilarity. She remained there, hot and defeated, with no response to the obscene remarks made at her. We found ourselves alone moments later. I sat silently and watched her from across the table. Finally, she asked the question directly from my imagination, "Bill, how could you do this to me? I thought you loved me." "Yes, Marie," I responded. "In the past couple weeks, I loved you as much as you loved me 6 years ago." I approached the platform and handed her some folded papers. "I'm filing for divorce. Consider yourself served if you stay in town. Katie and Brian will be in joint custody. Otherwise, I plan to fight for full custody, and you know I will win." I heard her scream in despair and wrath as I approached the door. "But you vowed not to divorce me. You said we could work it out," I said, returning my gaze to her. "Yes, Maria. So after all these years of your deception, I guess I lied to myself. Thank you for spending the time to hear today's story. If you enjoyed this essay, please like it and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a tale to share regarding your or someone else's circumstance, please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care.